I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I went to Catholic school growing up. I went to ballet class. When it came to my school life, it's where I excelled, it's what I enjoyed. I loved to read books. I felt safe at school. I felt safe around people who pledged their life to educate me and to take care of me and to treat me as someone worthwhile. But what was really happening at home was that school was the only safe place I had. I used to sleep in the library at school because it wasn't safe to sleep at home, or I wasn't able to sleep because there was men in my bedroom at night. I had men that my mom knew that would come to my ballet classes and my ballet recitals, and men who would pick me up from school or at the bus stop. We would just call them uncles. They weren't my uncles. They were men that wanted to spend time with me. I had parents that unfortunately didn't love each other, didn't love their children, and loved money more. My mom, I know that she was abused by her dad. If a survivor does not get help with their trauma that they've endured, sometimes they do perpetuate that onto another person. And so from 6 to 18, my mom sold me to men in our community.
Sometimes in order to understand this crime, we have to dispel some of the myths around it. And human trafficking carries with it a lot of myths, because when we talk about slavery, people think, what? That ended with the Civil War. But that is simply not true. There are more slaves today in our world than there were at any other time. Human trafficking is the second largest criminal activity in the world. It recently surpassed arms trafficking. It is second only to drug trafficking. Because guess what? The traffickers, the gangs, the organized crime, they have figured out where you can sell a drug or a weapon only one time. You can sell a man or a woman or a boy or a girl over and over and over again.
The buyers were stockbrokers, lawyers, doctors, dentists, things with a respectable title, but then also a respectable income. There are men that prayed before they spent time with me. And then there are men that would turn on their favorite movie and tell me all about why it was their favorite movie. For some survivors of trafficking, certain acts have certain payment. For my family, it was the amount of time invested. And then if they wanted the act filmed, that would raise the price point as well. My mom, she was connected to a family friend who was like an uncle. He had a business mindset of, well, if we use Liz in child pornography, then we could make even more money and we could distribute the films however we choose. It is absolutely plausible that you can be trafficked out of your own bedroom and go to school every day and no one knows.
Human trafficking is the exploitation of human beings for either the purposes of commercial sex or forced labor, and the trafficker uses force, fraud, or coercion to actually make money off of that person's back. Human trafficking is modern-day slavery, and these victims find themselves in situations that they literally cannot get out of. Force is anything that you can imagine when that word comes into your head, right? It's the beatings, the burnings, the rape, the gang rape.
The ways that they could control me could look like, if you don't do this, I'm going to hurt you worse than I did last time. For my uncle, I knew that his violence could be unimaginable.
Victims have been shot, they've been knifed, they've been mutilated and tortured in absolutely horrendous ways.
The fraud, of course, we deal with a lot, especially with teenagers. They're promised a job. They're promised some sort of romantic interest. They're promised a completely new life or escape or shelter. They don't realize what they're walking into.
Coercion is even more powerful. When we talk about coercion, we're talking about these psychological abuses.
If you don't do this, you don't really love me. I'm desperate for my mom to love me, and I was willing to do whatever it took.
If you don't do this, I'm gonna kill your little brother. If you don't do this, I know where your dad lives. I'm gonna kill your dad. If you don't do this, I'm gonna kill you. I mean, we've heard stories of traffickers where the traffickers literally put the gun to their head and pulled the trigger. And there's one bullet in that chamber and it's just waiting for it to come around. Anything that trafficker can think of to make that victim comply and obey the trafficker, that's what he or she will do.
Right now, I just want to bring to the stage from Truckers Against Trafficking. I'll make sure I said that without messing it up. Candace Harris, folks. Let's give her a big welcome.
Well, good morning. It is a privilege to be here with you this morning. Thanks, Greg. To talk to you, yes, indeed, about the realities of human trafficking, specifically a focus on domestic sex trafficking, and really how you, as a school bus driver, can play an integral role in recognizing and reporting this heinous crime. As Greg said, I'm Candace Harris. I'm the Executive Director of Truckers Against Trafficking. And Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT for short, as we like to call it, has been working with the trucking industry since 2009 on this issue. And truckers are proving time and time again that they are the eyes and ears of our nation's highways, as their efforts have led to many victims of human trafficking being identified and recovered by law enforcement. But now at TAT, we have decided we need to be approaching the bus industry as well. Because think about it, professional bus drivers, whether passenger or school, dispatch workers, terminal employees, maintenance operators, those folks also, you folks, are also on the front lines.
Growing up, going to elementary and high school, I rode a school bus. I went to a local Catholic school, and I actually had the same driver for the entire duration of my school career. His name was Mr. B. He was an old Southern gentleman who greeted you with your name and looked you in the eye every morning and every afternoon. Being on the school bus was safe because I knew Mr. B wouldn't do anything to me. Getting off the school bus meant that I was unsafe again. But I know that he had some troubling concerns about the fact that there was men waiting outside my house for me. And I think he had a lot of questions, ones that puzzled him that he didn't really have the answer for and probably made him feel sick inside.
Jeffco is made up of 86,500 students, and we transport pretty much a third of those students, so it can fluctuate one year to the other. Last year, we were right around 32,000 students that we transport every day. With a topic like this is about student safety. This is about, students, who you pick up and you drop off at wherever their location is every day, their safety. And it goes beyond the bus now. It goes to the point of they're walking away and you're watching which cars they're going to and making that difference. So for me, it's taking that extra second. Do we have to add more time to our routes? So be it. If it's gonna save a student from being in a situation that's unfavorable for them.
Keep your eyes open. If this is just in the back of your mind saying, where is this kid going and is this kid safe? Just take it upon yourself to be a hero in your head for 1 second. Just to look out for this kid for 1 second.
Half of America's school children ride the bus daily. I mean, you as a school bus driver interact with these kids on a continual basis. What if a child begins to have frequent absences? And before they were always on the school bus and go into school. What about if that child appears malnourished or unkempt and disheveled? And before, this kid came, clean clothes, hair was brushed, those kinds of things. Or you start to notice major changes in their behavior, uncontrollable anger, or maybe it's uncontrollable crying. There's all sorts of emotional highs and lows, and you're knowing something's just not right with this kid. Do Do you actually see any outward signs of bruising? Or maybe the kid is showing up with all of the latest gadgets, right? Or their nails done, or the hair done. I mean, sometimes the pimps will groom their victims, and in doing so, they shower them with affection and attention and purchased items in order to earn that person's trust and affection.
It could be as simple as taking note of how they come on the bus and then getting off the bus, and then what's off. If it was 100 degrees out, you would notice someone who came in with a turtleneck and long pants. And you would wonder, what are they hiding underneath the turtleneck? What is the reason for their clothing? Mr. B, his position was very strategic because he had eyes and ears on a situation where he could observe my behavior. He could see whether I was happy or sad. Maybe Mr. B really did see the time that my purse knocked over and a bunch of condoms came out. Pair that together with the other indicators of me avoiding his eye contact. Mr. B had the opportunity to observe the comings and goings from my house. Who was there to put me on the bus in the morning and who was there to pick me up at night? Were they always the same people? Mr. B knew most people's names that would pick up a child.
If you are in a position to actually have a conversation, ask them, do they know who's picking them up? You know, are they familiar with the person who put them on the bus?
Two girls were just sort of skating past an abandoned alley, and one of them was dressed in a very revealing outfit, and they looked extremely young. I approached the first one, who was a little bit more brassy with me, gave me a lot of attitude, used a lot of foul language, explained that her father was waiting in a car just across the street, you know, and I looked, I didn't see anything. I asked her to describe the car. She fumbled a little bit. The story just didn't make any sense. I asked them if they were related. One said yes, the other said no. It turns out that the first girl had been missing for the past 2 years, that she had an open warrant for prostitution from when she was 10 years old. The other girl had been from an affluent neighborhood in a suburban area of New Jersey. Her parents had no idea she'd even left the house. What happened was that the supposed father that was going to pick them up was actually a pimp that had instructed the 12-year-old that was working for him to go online and make friends with girls and tried to lure them into the city, which she had done with this 13-year-old girl, it turned out. You can't always find a bad guy, but you can always find a victim. They're out there, you know, whether they're about to become a victim or they've been victimized for some time.
One of the biggest assets that a school bus driver would have is the rapport that they can build with another human being who trusts them to get them from point A to point B and to keep them safe while they do it. Building that rapport means treating them like a human being and noticing the normal details and the not so normal.
School is often one of the last places that these victims are seen before they disappear entirely. They may have already run away from home, but they're still showing up to school. You do not want to talk to this kid and say, "Are you a victim of human trafficking?" They will look at you sideways. They have probably never even heard of the term. But if you say something like, "Is anybody making you do something you're uncomfortable with? Are you being threatened in any way? Is your family being threatened?" And when you're talking to that kid, get to know them a little bit. I know the bus ride is not that long, but maybe they can sit behind you. Maybe you can engage them in conversation. Maybe they just know there's a friendly face out there, an adult in their life who actually cares. Ask them, "Sure you're all right? Anybody making you do anything you're uncomfortable with? I just want you to know I'm here for you." That makes such a difference when they're actually treated as a human being.
If I could tell a bus driver one thing, even my Mr. B, I would tell him that his interaction with me mattered. I would tell him, thank you for just seeing me as a person, because for so long I felt like an object.
What we found with Truckers Against Trafficking is that it's amazing what an impact that a small group of dedicated individuals can have when they actually understand the issue that they're looking at. They understand the crime of human trafficking, and then they care enough to get involved. And so now we have hundreds of thousands of truck drivers and truck stop employees, right, who get this crime and who are actively looking for it. And so instead of being passive as they were before because they didn't understand the crime, they are now becoming a disruptive force along our nation's highways. They are recognizing the crime of human trafficking, and they are immediately placing calls to local law enforcement and to the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And as a result, lives are being saved.
We depend on the public to alert us to this, that the public has to come up to us, the public has to take an interest in other people's kids, other kids in danger. We constantly depend on drivers and dispatchers, traffic agents, control agents, to alert us to this. And they're being educated, as far as I know, on a national level about what human trafficking is and the sort of mass exploitation that's going on. The sort of thing that we would turn a blind eye to, we can't afford to anymore.
If you're seeing a crime in progress, call 911. But then we're asking you after that 911 call, or if you're not sure if you're really seeing human trafficking, call the National Human Trafficking Hotline. You will be talking to staff 24/7 that are trained on the crime of human trafficking and can help answer any questions you might have so that you are able to ascertain if indeed you are looking at a human trafficking situation.
Calling the National Human Trafficking Hotline is an anonymous call. They will not ask any identifying information, but instead their only focus is on this victim and the information they need to give law enforcement to change the reality for that victim. Mr. B should have had a protocol. Mr. B should have known if I see something and I think something's off about this child, I can be anonymous and just report it to the local law enforcement or the trafficking agency. If that step is too scary and overwhelming, I would hope that Mr. B had a manager or someone higher up in his food chain who could make those decisions for him. Having a policy of this is what we will do with suspected trafficking takes the guesswork out, because Mr. B would have already known if I see something, I have to say something.
So when you partner with Busing on the Lookout, basically we are asking you to train your employees. Every single bus driver and terminal employee, watch this training DVD and then go over the signs to look for that are accompanying on this bus wallet card, this Busing on the Lookout bottle wallet card. You know, when you open the card up, it has the red flag indicators, it's got the questions to ask, and you also have the actionable information law enforcement needs to open an investigation. And the great part about this wallet card is it means you always have the national hotline number handy and you can make the call.
You know, for me, what we're going to do at this point is, you know, the brochure and information that you have, we're going to put these on each one of our buses. So now we have that number readily available for our drivers. So instead of them trying to find it, it's right here on their dashboard that they can reach out and start doing that thing and say, hey, okay, this looks kind of weird. So I'm going to hit that number and kind of go forward and do so.
Feel free to be wrong that exploitation is happening and being willing just to speak up. Being wrong is great. I actually hope that none of the situations are trafficking. But even if it's not and it's still something bad, you did something good about it.
A conversation or an interaction with one of these juveniles who may or may not be missing could yield to us the bad guy's name, where the bad guy lives, what the bad guy's car looks like, sometimes even their license plate, how many other girls or boys are working for this bad guy, what his hours of operation are, the other criminal activities that he's involved in, his known associates, their points of contact, and any other crimes that they may have observed personally for people in the transportation industry. They're key with this because their eyes are out there.
You know, most people, when they hear this about this issue, and I get it, it's dark, it's tough. Most people want to help, but not everybody is in a critical position to make an impact. But you guys are.
I truly believe that knowledge is what's going to make the difference. If you see something, you can say something. It's going to be that one small act that changes everything for a survivor. If the only thing you do is become trained and knowledgeable and understand that human trafficking even happens, so many people actually think it's a myth. I'm here to tell you that I lived it, I survived it, and no other human being should have to go through it. And so I hope that by watching this today, that you would say, enough is enough, and I'm tired of human beings being sold.